today. We'll probably have a few more people trickling in over the next few minutes. And we'd love for you to share with us in the chat box your name, your pronouns, where you're joining us from. It's lovely to see all of your faces, and we know that many of you are joining us from different parts of LA County. So chat in the chat box. My name is Sharon Stratton. I'm the program manager at SVPLA, and it is my privilege and pleasure to be here with you today to spotlight the incredible work of local organizations working towards systemic change. I've had the joy of working alongside an incredible staff team at SVP since 2017, as well as a community of SVP partners who give their time, their money, their talent, and their hearts to support the work of incredible nonprofit partners, many of whom you'll meet today. So at SVPLA, we channel our power to advance racial and social justice. We do this through grants, through training, peer learning, and healing spaces. Today, we're inviting you to imagine with us a more just and loving LA through the stories of our presenters who you're going to hear from. And we invite you to consider committing to actions to co-create that vision of LA with us. So before I get started, I'd like to ground us in the moment that we're in. We're nearly 13 months into this pandemic. Many of us have experienced profound isolation. We're grieving the horrible shootings in Atlanta and the rise in anti-Asian violence across the country. We're mindful of the trauma of the blatant anti-Black racism baked into our criminal justice systems. And just this past week here in LA, over 400 police officers commandeered a public park, Echo Park, to evict people who are experiencing homelessness in the middle of a pandemic, violently displacing people from public land. So the problems that we're grappling with here in LA are complex and they're deeply interconnected. Part of the reason why our accelerator and SVP's work more broadly supports initiatives that are working across issue areas is we recognize we can't solve one of these problems in isolation without solving all of them. So today you can expect to hear from our current group of accelerator leaders. As I mentioned, we've been partnering with them on our Systems Change program, our Systems Change Accelerator program since October 2019. And they're working across a broad spread of issues to advance justice in housing and education, civic engagement, environmental and soil health, safe streets and mobility, public transit, criminal justice reform, and abolition. So as you're listening today, we hope that you're inspired to explore the work of these organizations more deeply and to respond to their asks for support. In the spirit of highlighting our growing community of Accelerator alumni, we're also joined by two special guests from our previous year's cohorts, Sahar Pirzada of Vigilant Love and Helen Leung of LA Mass. Both were previously on our Accelerator program. They've both now become SVP partners, and we're excited that Helen recently joined our board. So I'd like to invite Sahar. Has Sahar made it to the room? I'd like to invite Sahar to kick us off by sharing what does it mean to show up as a partner in advancing justice in this moment, especially with regards to Vigilant Love's work and your own journey with SVPLA.
Hi, everyone. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you all. Sharon, thanks for creating this space for us to connect today. So as Sharon said, I'm with Vigilant Love, and we are a grassroots organization challenging Islamophobia through arts, healing, and organizing. And we do that with a solidarity-based model. And so our kind of origins really are rooted in communities being in community with each other and focusing on relationship building as a key part of our kind of movement and our ability to enact change towards liberation for all. And we really came out of, it was around the time of the San Bernardino shooting, actually. Japanese Americans reached out to Muslim American communities in the greater Los Angeles area, and they just noticed that there was this there was this rise in anti-refugee, anti-Muslim, anti-immigrant sentiment. And they said, look, because of our experience with Japanese American incarceration during World War II, we know what it feels to be alone during these times, and we want to be intentional about our solidarity with you all. And so we started to organize a healing vigil, and like, you know, that same week that we were organizing the vigil to be on the anniversary of Pearl Harbor is when the San Bernardino shooting happened. And it just made it that much more apparent that we need to be creating these spaces for the long term. And we came together, that was back in 2015, and we've been meeting ever since. And we've been also meeting every year to break fast together in the month of Ramadan for our iftars. But really, I think the roots of our organization have to do with what it means to be actively in relationship with each other, not just for the sake of like, hey, we're doing an interfaith event and getting to know each other and what our differences are, but how are we actively resisting white supremacy together? How are we actively building authentic relationships so that we can protect each other and find safety in each other? And so really kind of, you know, not saying that like we have to, we're all the same, but that we are all impacted by white supremacy. We are all impacted by systems of oppression. And so under that guise, with shared values, how are we then resisting together? We also, you know, since then, our organization has grown, and we've been able to launch a Solidarity Arts Fellowship for Japanese American and Muslim American college age students to build together. We are in the midst of a organizing campaign called Services Not Surveillance to bring awareness to the fact that there's national security in our mental health industry and how we can actually address that and make sure that, you know, especially with calls to defund the police and everyone's like, put more resources in mental health. We're like, hold up 1 second, what mental health resources? Because some of those mental health resources are tools of the state to surveil us and to incarcerate us. So it's services, not surveillance. And then we also have a Unpacking Anti-Blackness workshop series that we launched last year to kind of using the pod model. If those of you are familiar with transformative justice, oftentimes we talk about pods and how we can hold each other accountable and hold ourselves accountable in our kind of pods. And so we use that model in this workshop series to talk about what it means to unpack anti-Blackness in ourselves and in our communities. And it's predominantly for non-Black POC. But in this moment, especially kind of just given everything that is going on, we're also just creating space to hold space. So we know that there's been a rise in white supremacist violence against East Asian community members. There's also tons of state violence. There's COVID-19 and the state's failure to protect us from a global pandemic. There's Islamophobia and its impacts on our communities from that. There's also the fact that you had January 6th, the violence that came from that is being used by the state to pour more funding into policing, to pour more funding into the national security apparatus. And literally, like, we got word just last week that there's $20 million that has been made available for counterterrorism grants. And they're using the fact that the January 6th attacks happened to justify that. So we're seeing how all of this is playing out, and we're connecting the dots, and we're trying to figure out, you know, how is the state capitalizing on our trauma and the violence we're experiencing to wash their hands clean of the role that they played and really individualize the issue instead of addressing its systemic origins. And so kind of creating space for all of that complexity and making sure that we're creating opportunities for folks to mobilize. So I have like a few call to actions. One of them is that at the state level for the state of California, they're trying to pass a domestic terrorism task force bill that's actually just going to make it really easy for different agencies to information share and to criminalize folks based on their identity, their thoughts, and their mental health. And so we're asking for folks to oppose this bill, and you can read the, and I hope this is okay that I'm doing this, Sharon. You could read the organizational sign-on letter there, and then you can sign your name onto the letter if you're a part of an organization here. And you know, they're claiming that it's to fight domestic terrorism / white supremacy, but historically these counterterrorism programs target Muslim, Black, and Brown communities the most, and just give more funding to policing, and so we're not having it. So definitely sign on to that. There's also a vigil that we're holding tonight. I'm sure many of you have been seeing in the news just how can you keep up, right? Last week when we were planning this, we were addressing the attacks in Atlanta, Boulder, and now we're adding the death of Muhammad Anwar to that, as well as the attacks on an elderly Asian woman in New York, right? And this is just, you know, hit after hit. We're just knowing that there's always going to be a need for space. And so if anyone would like to join us, we're holding space for that tonight. And we'll also be adding our analysis of how we're seeing the state kind of respond in ways, again, that are just really harmful. And then last but not least, we're hoping that folks can join us. We're starting our blessed month of Ramadan, April 13th. And so we're holding an iftar for our communities virtually on the 29th. All are welcome. And yeah, we're hoping that we'll see you at one or all of these things. So thank you so much, Sharon, for this time. And if anyone has any additional questions, feel free to reach out. The last thing I will mention is that I have personally grown so much from being a part of the SVP community. When we started back in 2017 as like a fiscally sponsored project, we didn't know the first thing about running an organization. And it was really from the support of SVP that we were able to understand, how do you manage your finances? How do you vision for the future? And how do you build in community through philanthropy and through kind of just being a part of spaces where things are happening, right? And it was through SVP that I also found the confidence as like kind of a leader in the LA space to take up space. Because oftentimes as like a young woman of color, you're told that your voice doesn't matter and your voice isn't representative of our community's issues. But you know, being gifted that platform by SVP helped me to realize that actually nobody owns the mic for my community, and that, you know, if I take it and if I use it, I also have to learn how to share it effectively. And so that's just something I've really appreciated. And so, you know, as I kind of finally graduated from grad school and came into a little bit of wealth, I was like, I want to actually use this for an organization I truly believe in. And just seeing the latest cohort of accelerators, it kind of just stamped it in for me that this is an organization I want to support as a partner. And so I just applaud the leadership, Sharon and Christine in particular. I just have nothing but amazing things to say about how they've created space for leaders in the LA community to grow and thrive. And I'm really excited to hear from all the accelerators today.
Oh, Sahar, you're so wonderful. Thank you so much. I really, it's a gift to all of us that you are sharing yourself with us. And I'll say, having personally attended Vigilant Love's vigils, that it is such a warm, supportive, healing space, and so necessary for these times. So thank you so much for being here. And everyone, you can check out the resources and actions that Sahar mentioned in the chat box. So I will direct your attention there. With that, I would like to introduce our first speaker from our current accelerator cohort. And I do just want to remind you all that our cohort are going to be sharing updates on their biggest successes from the last year, what they're focused on in 2021, and they may be making asks to you of direct ways that you can help them. So be taking notes, be curious, and be ready to learn from some really inspiring leaders. So with that, I will welcome Tafari Bain, who is the Chief Strategist at Sypla.
Hi, everybody. 2020 was Sypla's 10th anniversary, and despite facing a generation-defining global pandemic, we stayed focused on our core mission, catalyzing vibrant public spaces, active transportation, and good health while engaging with people to transform our relationship with our communities and with each other. While 2020 saw our signature Sypla events postponed, we also recognized who we were way beyond our open street events. The community that Systems has built over 10 years continued to stay engaged with us, and we stayed engaged with them. We used our voice in social media platforms to promote connection in a sometimes disconnected COVID world. We produced field guides to local businesses to help people circulate their dollars locally and support their community during these difficult times. We led bike rides to highlight new bike lanes and street infrastructure designed to make streets safer and address the vehicular murder crisis, which didn't even abate when driving plummeted during the height of the pandemic. 2020 did have its highlights. We were invited to join the Highline Network, a community of North American nonprofits developing or operating infrastructure reuse as public spaces. We also won an Urban Land Institute Open Space Award, recognized as an unconventional best park with enormous reach and impact beyond any one community. These recognitions serve to remind us of the importance of getting back to doing what we do best, bringing people together. We are currently partnering with the City of LA and LADOT to expand the LA Alfresco program, working to ensure small businesses in the communities hardest hit by the pandemic get access to the help they need. The program provides the opportunity to have significantly more seating for customers and is serving as a lifeline for our smallest businesses. These businesses are critical to the rich fabric that is Los Angeles, employing locals and improving community health. We are also identifying locations and community partners for the launch of our Systems Minis, small block-long street closures to create larger plazas for larger community gatherings. Systems Minis will instill social confidence and restore comfort as we prepare for the return of our large-scale Systems events later this year. And this year, we are launching a new partnership with the City of LA on programs like the Sustainable Transportation and Equity Project to bring new and improved transportation options and safer streets to South Los Angeles. This program will improve residents' mobility and access to economic opportunities. Initiatives like this will make communities more resilient and sustainable, able to withstand the kinds of challenges that will only become more common in the future. Just like we reimagining LA one ride, walk, roll, run, or smile at a time, we are reimagining the work we do in LA, one street and neighborhood at a time. Systems is about reclaiming social confidence, and we are beyond thrilled to safely get back on the streets, get back to our communities, and get back to celebrating the diversity and culture that make LA special. You want to help? Shop locally and support small businesses to circulate more dollars in your community. If you need some suggestions, you can go to our website, www.syclovia.org, and hit our Explore LA section to find our small business field guides. You can also find our donate button there, because financial contributions of any size are what keep us going. And plus, our monthly giving program does come with some cool swag, like this tumbler. Thank you for your time. We will see you in the streets.
Thank you, Tafari. I will say, as someone who has missed Systems, I did my first and my last. I didn't realize it would be my last for a year last January. I am so excited for Systems Minis. Everyone, you can check out the Systems website. We've popped it in the chat, and I am very interested in getting some of that swag too. So I'd like to welcome our next leader. Michael Martinez is the Executive Director at LA Compost.
Thank you, Sharon. Full transparency, I'd say our biggest victory of last year is simply surviving. Reflecting on everything that word represents, really just having grace for ourselves and our surrounding community during this season. Taking a moment to pause and kind of highlight every win, no matter how small it was. And one of those small wins for me was really pausing with my team and reflecting on our mission, vision, and values, and how are we meeting people where they're at, and how are we being intentional about community engagement? How are we really respecting community's perspective, lived experience, and leadership, and how are our programs led by those values? Out of that kind of pause came the 3C model that we established, which stands for conocer, compartir, y co-crear. How are we truly getting to know our neighbors? How are we engaging and participating in dialogue? And how are we co-creating these community-based solutions? And we're really excited that this is kind of the driving force for our new programs and just how we walk and move forward. Another victory was a motion that we introduced at the city council level called Regenerate LA, a motion that's going to focus on healthy park management, rooted in climate change, environmental justice, and health and resiliency at the community level. From compost creation, compost distribution, tree and native plant giveaways, really focusing on capacity and capacitating green spaces in neighborhoods all throughout the city. And then another large victory was being an awardee for a Cal Recycle grant. We were part of a collaborative group across the state where CalRecycle came out with its first ever funding opportunity for this work, community composting for green spaces, building hubs similar to our model across the entire state of California. And that's what we're focused on this year, is really building this composting ecosystem across the city, realizing that we're a small group, but we can share resources and experience to really educate, equip, and empower individuals to engage with this full story of food. We've seen a huge increase in our program since the onset of COVID. Our drive up and drop off model was a response to COVID due to the fact that we were unable to be at the farmers markets. We served 400 families within 4 hours, capturing 4,000 to 5,000 pounds of food scraps within that time, processing at local parks. We are engaging in a compost cultivator program, kind of establishing a volunteer 2.0 to allow for communities and community leaders to step up and work alongside our compost managers. We've launched our soil farmer program, which capacitates individuals' households with the micro hub approach, allowing them to build their soil, create green spaces in their neighborhood and parkways, vacant lots, and really establish this human network that we're developing. Really excited to be working in tandem with LA Rec and Park. We're going to be capacitating the first ever community compost hub at Griffith Park, one of the largest urban parks in the country, and really engage with the Rec and Park staff to identify the 16,000 acres of park space and how we can reimagine how that can support communities. You can help by participating in this human network that reflects the soil food web, from participating in a monthly donation, volunteering with our work, and just checking out our updates at lacompost.org. Thank you all for your time, and I look forward to seeing you both virtually and hopefully in person.
Well, thank you, Michael. And my partner has just outed me in the chat. I drop off my food scraps every 2 weeks at LA Compost, and it's really changed the way that I think about my food waste and in relationship to community and healthy soil. So thank you and your team for all your amazing work. All right, I'm excited to introduce our third speaker, John Yee, the Executive Director of LA Walks.
All right, how's everyone doing? They gave us 3 minutes, so let's get right into it. My name is John Yee. I am with Los Angeles Walks, a pedestrian advocacy nonprofit. And we do what we do because A, the leading cause of death for LA's elementary and middle school children are car crashes. Every 36 hours, an Angelenos is killed in a car crash. And the vast majority are from immigrants and communities of color and in neighborhoods that lack the most basic pedestrian infrastructure. So what did 2020 look like for us? So I'm going to share this through the framework of our two-step theory of change. So follow with me here. Our first step is we organize to secure safe street infrastructure. We organize to secure safe street infrastructure. So in 2020, some examples are on Sentinel Avenue and Fairfax Boulevard, we organized for street lighting, crosswalks, and wider sidewalks. In the Harbor community of Wilmington, we organized for a bus shelter adjacent to a senior housing, 4 crosswalks, and 2 speed humps. And in central LA, we organized to secure 4 speed humps, a curb ramp, and a sidewalk repair. This is our bread and butter. This is what we do well, co-navigating with communities and often complex, opaque, English-only city bureaucracy for basic life-saving pedestrian infrastructure. And if you think that's a simple feat, I dare you to try to get 1 crosswalk in your neighborhood, especially if you're monolingual, non-English speaking, or undocumented. And so it's at this point I always say, what good is it though, John, to change 1 street when you have an entire city transportation and planning system that keeps spitting out these misdesigned streets? So this takes me to our second step of our theory of change. Through these campaigns, we built political community power to take on the larger system. So what does that look like? In 2020, some examples are 3 of our community members secured appointments by their city council members to serve on the LA Pedestrian Advisory Committee. 2 of our community members are running for neighborhood council, and another was recently elected to serve on the transportation committee of her neighborhood council. We pushed for the repeal of the 85th percentile rule, and during the elections, we actually hosted an LA City Council candidates forum for CD12. So we do all this because we're not here just to change concrete and cement, but our eventual goal is to change culture, norms, laws, and long-term design. So for 2021, we're continuing to grow our community organizing work, right? But what are we looking forward to? We're also hoping to get more involved in policy. So give you all an update, we are actually official co-sponsors to Assemblymember Ting's AB 1238, which would decriminalize jaywalking. We're working with Councilman Buscaino on a pedestrian anti-harassment motion. And we're getting involved with coalitions like our friends here, ACT LA, on organizing around LA Metro, our region's largest bus and train operator. So the best part, how can you help? So let's be honest here. You know, as a nonprofit, we function off the kindness and generosity of donors and foundations. And so if you're one or the other, please consider Los Angeles Walks. And I have the perfect opportunity for you. On April 22nd, we're actually having a fundraiser, and I'm going to share the link in the chat box. Sorry, I should have had this prepared. And so please consider purchasing a ticket and becoming a sponsor. And finally, you know, I want to make a commitment to you all here who joined us today. You know, if you, your corporate board, your nonprofit leadership, or your community organization wants to learn more about us, get more involved, I'm committed to hopping on a call with you. It could be 45 minutes to an hour, hour and a half, however long you need to do a mini fast pitch. I'm happy to share that with you and go through our pitch deck. So that's my offer to you, and let me know if you want to take it up. I'll put my email in the chat box as well. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing, John, and for always getting us so much more excited about speed humps than I think we ever knew we could be. And I think for all of us, you know, being cooped up at home, if that is available or accessible to us, walking has been such an important form of self-care. And I love how you shared that it's not just about changing concrete and cement, it's about changing attitudes, policies, and culture. So thank you, and everyone check out LA Walks fundraiser in the chat box. Our next speaker is Laura Raymond, the Executive Director of ACT LA, who John just did a lovely segue into. So welcome, Laura.
Thank you, Sharon, and thanks, John, for the segue. Hi, everyone. It's really great to be with you all this afternoon. I'm Laura Raymond. I'm the director of ACT LA. We are a coalition of 41 community organizations that together fight for housing and transit justice in LA County. Last year, in 2020, ACT LA and our members co-founded Healthy LA to respond to the pandemic's economic fallout, and we continue to coordinate its efforts to address the pandemic-related rent debt crisis. Over 600,000 families in LA County were behind in rent as of December 2020. And this could mean evictions and long-term economic crises for a significant portion of our county. State bill that was designed to address this, SB 91, actually falls short. It will cover some portion of debt for some, but landlords have the ability to opt out. So we need to continue to fight for the many renters who will undoubtedly fall through the cracks. In 2020, we also successfully fought Metro's 20% bus cuts. LA was the region in the United States that saw the smallest drop off in transit ridership during the pandemic. Essential workers continued to rely heavily on public transit, yet the cuts to service led to crowded buses and even more unreliable service for transit riders. Through surveys and member engagement, ACT LA shared rider accounts and documentation with Metro's board and generated dozens of rider calls at every board meeting. We also organized a transit rider meeting with board chair Eric Garcetti. And in January, we successfully got the cuts reversed. So we will see service restored to its pre-pandemic levels in a few months. In 2020, in addition to continuing this work, we're making major progress on our campaign to cut Metro's policing contracts. Metro spends almost $1 billion, mostly on overtime pay, for LAPD, LA Sheriff's Department, and Long Beach PD contracts. ACT LA recently released a report entitled Metro as a Sanctuary, Reimagining Safety on Public Transit, which lays out our vision for what Metro should fund instead of police, things like a transit ambassador program, outreach and services for unhoused riders, and better station design. Just last week, the board discussed our report, and we secured $40 million to seed the transit ambassador program in 2021 and allocate more money towards outreach services. ACT LA will be sitting on Metro's new work group that was established for new safety programs this year. And we're looking forward to pushing for the police contracts to be ended when they're up for renewal in 2022. This would be a real success story for divestment from policing and investment in community-led alternatives. We and our members are also really excited by progress at Metro around making the system fare-free. Metro is studying options for this right now, and we continue to turn out transit riders in support of this transformational idea. We recently held a community forum on fare-free transit that we recorded, and I can share the link to that with you all. And we and our members were always looking for support and collaboration. So if people are feeling drawn to this mission, we definitely need people to call City Council, the Board of Supervisors, and LA Metro during hearings. One of the best ways to plug into our action alerts is to follow us on Twitter and to sign up on our newsletter, which you can do through our website. We could also always use volunteer help with graphic design, videos, online organizing. It's so critical right now. We're also looking for funding for station activations this year. When it's safe, we want to continue to start. We did this pre-pandemic, and we want to continue to take over stations with vendors, info stands, music, programming to engage the public and help everyone envision what real safety can look like. We're looking for donations both for that programming and also to support our members to organize around this. And we are also continually seeking funding to just support our coalition staffing needs. So if anyone is inclined for that, you can definitely contact me directly to support in any way. And I just want to thank everyone so much for all the support over the last year, especially SVP. You've been such an amazing community, and we really, really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And I just want to acknowledge how tirelessly you have worked and your staff team in coalition with Healthy LA and more community partnerships. And I love that Fare Free Metro feels so much more realistic and like it's within reach. So just really appreciate all that you're doing at ACT LA. So we've dropped links in the chat. Please sign up to their mailing list. And as Laura said, there's plenty of opportunities to volunteer, fund, and support their profound work. Awesome. Okay, so who is our next presenter? Okay, next up we have the wonderful Sam Prater, Executive Director of LA Room and Board. And we're also so lucky to call him one of our most recent board members. You're on mute, Sam. You'll just need to unmute yourself. We're having a little iPhone issue. We were trying to troubleshoot this earlier.
I don't know what's going on. Can you all hear me? You can hear me. What's up, everybody? Sorry about that. I'm doing this Zoom thing from my iPhone, which I don't normally do. So I apologize. I'm so happy to be here with you all. I mean, honestly, I owe our entire success to this wonderful community at SVP LA. So I'm Sam Prater, founder and executive director of Los Angeles Room and Board, where we are focused on ending student hunger and homelessness and ensuring that students can complete their college degree. And so one of the prompts, that we were given in this discussion today was talk about some of our biggest victories. And so I want to just name a few that I'm really proud of. And we opened, when I talked to you all last, right, when I came into the SVP LA family, we were just talking about an idea that we had, right, using vacant dorm spaces or campus adjacent sort of facilities to sort of house students who are experiencing homelessness. And since then, we've opened up our first housing project called the Opportunity House, where we are currently housing about 35 students. And so it's just been an insane journey, and it happened so fast because of your support. And so we finished our first semester at the end of the year. And so we collected some data about how students did. And so I'm happy to report that 77% of our students experienced a cumulative GPA of higher than 3.0 after living in our house. 58% had an increase in their GPA. 85% of the students here earned all the credits they attended. So if you enrolled in 12 units per semester, 85% of the students earned all of those credits that they were enrolled in last semester. And then 54% of our students reported feeling more academically prepared. And so the work that we're doing here is not just about housing, obviously, for us. So we have a comprehensive set of wraparound services that include tutoring and academic mentorship, financial literacy and planning, mental health and wellness, job readiness and career development, and also leadership development and mentoring. And so with our amazing nonprofit partners, we've been able to support and really wrap our arms around our students. And so I'm really, really proud of the work that we did this last year. Thanks in large part to you all. But also, we were able to sort of, because of the platform that SVP LA gave, we went from having, when we first started with SVP LA, what, $40,000 in the bank, and we were able to raise by the end of 2020 north of $750,000 because of the work you all have done to help us amplify this work. And so again, I'm so grateful and so thankful for you all. So the next part is, what do we focus on in 2021? What I know is that LACCD, so those 9 campuses in Los Angeles experienced a decline of 20% of their campus enrollments across all of their 9 campuses because of this pandemic, right? And I've always sort of touted this idea that, hey, the California Budget and Policy Center forecasts a deficit of 1 million college educated workers by 2030, right? And so we're seeing this happen in real time. 20% reduction in enrollment at LACCD campuses. So the 230,000 students that they serve, 20% fewer students, right? And so, but it hasn't exacerbated the need. And one of the reasons why folks have been dropping out of school is because they don't have their basic needs met. We saw in the 6 months that we've been in operation, 347 students apply for this space, right? We're only housing 35 right now. We'll house 50 in the fall, but 347 students reached out to us over the last 6 months. So there's a great need for support and housing and services for our students. And so I'm excited to have partnered with LACCD. We entered into an MOU with them. And I got a chance to sort of help them lobby sort of our congresspersons in Sacramento. And so we were able to land an extra $100 million sort of like set aside in this baby budget that Governor Newsom sort of passed last month. And so all of the community colleges across the state will receive some extra funding, 11 million of which will be going to LACCD campuses so they can enter into agreements with organizations like LA Women Board, Levness, a Shower of Hope, et cetera. And so I'm excited about being a part of that effort. And so those funds become available in April. So I'm excited about that. And I'm also excited about the partnership that we have with our wonderful nonprofit partners that do this work with us. So Stepping Forward LA, who does our leadership development and mentorship. Ready to Succeed LA, who does our job readiness and career development. They gave 10 internships to our students. Twinspire, who does all of our financial literacy and planning. They did a 12-week workshop with our students. And so I'm excited about doing this work in partnership with them, as well as our partnership with CSUN and Cal and UCLA for our MSW interns. So our efforts in 2021, because like I said, 347 students applied, we're expanding. And so campuses like Cal State Dominguez Hills, Cal State LA, and Marymount California University have reached out for the use of their vacant dorm rooms. And so now we're happy to report that we're starting our conversations with Marymount California University down in San Pedro to offer 50 more bed spaces down there. And so I'm excited about that effort. And so that leads me to the ask, what do we need? How can we continue to receive your support? It really is just capacity building, right? And so I had slightly underestimated the amount of trauma and amount of need that our students have with respect to mental health and wellness. And so we've been sort of like making our linkages with DMH and with a organization that I entered into an agreement with called Soulful Ray Therapy, but there's just a lot of need. And so we're right now fundraising for a full-time licensed therapist role that can provide the necessary support to our students, because you can't focus on your academics and becoming a scholar when you're dealing with so much trauma. And so that is what I'm focused on now. Would love to solicit your support in that way to raise funds for those capacity building efforts. But also just, if you can, again, we're still a baby nonprofit. We're only a year and so old. And so as you learn about opportunities to, for funding to support work like ours, I'd be happy to sort of connect with you via email or phone. I'll put my email or phone number in the chat box. And so that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for this wonderful platform, SVP LA. Thank you to this wonderful community for your support. I would not have been able to do it without you. So much love and respect to you. Thank you so much.
Oh, Sam, you're just so inspiring. I can see everyone responding in the chat, and congratulations on that huge legislative, that budget piece. That is so exciting. And
super exciting.
We feel so proud just to be a part of this community with you. And I love that really specific ask. There's a really specific way that folks can support you in this moment. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so we are now going to be joined by another Sam Lewis, Executive Director from Anti-Recidivism Coalition. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you, everyone. So for those of you who may not know, ARC's mission is to end mass incarceration in California by empowering formerly and currently incarcerated people. We do this in a number of ways. We offer comprehensive services, including rehabilitative programming while inside. Upon release, we provide a support network made up of formerly incarcerated people and our allies, housing, therapy, education, real career paths, and opportunities to advocate for policy change. We are a peer-led organization. 75% of our staff are formerly incarcerated, including myself. Having spent 24 years in prison and now 10 years in both reentry and working on policy, my true lived experience in formal education gives me a unique understanding of our carceral systems, policies, and what's required to de-incarcerate our state, possibly our nation, and provide pathways to healing and returning home. During this difficult past year, we took direct action to support both our currently incarcerated and formerly incarcerated community members. Beginning in March, when institutions were having major outbreaks, ARC donated over 50,000 bars of antibacterial soap and over 10,000 masks or face covers to prisons that were first experiencing these breakouts. We conducted an intensive member outreach to our 1,670 members or so to determine what our members needed in terms of support. We found that many of our members needed financial support due to either loss of jobs or cut in income due to the pandemic. With the help of our board and donors, we established a rapid COVID relief fund, and today we've given out close to $1 million to both our members and some of our returning citizens that were incarcerated. ARC led the collaboration of community-based organizations that advocated for the release of over 12,000 people from the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, the most people that were released in the United States from any state institutions. To ensure that this large number of people were being released or supported, ARC, in collaboration with a number of organizations such as CEO, Amity Foundation, A New Way of Life, the Board of State Community and Corrections, and our philanthropic community, worked together to provide transportation, housing, and financial assistance to our returning community members. ARC quickly transitioned when the pandemic hit from actual in-person services to virtual programming. Our Second Chance Pre-Apprenticeship Bootcamp, which puts people in building trades, did not miss a beat. We placed over 50 formerly incarcerated people in union jobs in LA and Orange County in the past year. We continue to provide rehabilitative programming by providing study packets for many more people than we actually had the capacity to do because of requests in order to keep people focused on their rehabilitation. We also created media recordings that we sent into the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Last year was California's worst fire season. On the fire line, what many people did not realize were 30 formerly incarcerated firefighters. These men were our first graduates of our VTC training firefighting program. This segues into some of the policy we did. So in the past 8 years, ARC has passed 27 pieces of legislation. And last year, 2 of the pieces that I like to highlight were Miranda rights for juveniles and making sure that formerly incarcerated firefighters could have their records expunged so that they could get their EMT licenses. ARC also played a key role in ACA 6, which became Proposition 17, voting rights for over 50,000 people that had returned from incarceration that were on parole. This year, we're co-sponsoring a number of pieces of legislation, including ending or eliminating involuntary servitude from the California Constitution, reforming gang enhancement, promoting youth success and empowerment, ending extreme sentencing, and ban the box. We've also taken our first steps into federal legislation. And one of the pieces of legislation that we are supporting is Truth and Racial Healing and Transformation, somewhat like the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that the South African government and other governments did after transitions of government or upheavals that required healing. If you want to support us, please look at our website. There are many different ways, but I think the best way for you to support us is to get involved and donate. Thank you again. Thank you for this amazing community. And more than anything else, thank you for just having a listening ear. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you, Sam. It is amazing to think about the level of work that you were able to achieve in such difficult circumstances, supporting incarcerated folks, passing of Proposition 17 in coalition with other allies. So thank you so much for all the work that you're leading at ARC and for being here with us. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our next guest, David Levness, the Executive Director of LA Forward.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sharon. Good afternoon. My name is David Levness. I'm the founder and executive director of LA Forward. Really happy to be here today with all of you, even if it's virtual. 2020 for us at LA Forward was a breakout year, and the SVP Accelerator and community was a huge part of that success. Now we're on track to really grow our impact even further in 2021 as a community of people fighting for an LA that's really fair and flourishing for everybody. So looking back, in 2020, we got an LA 2050 grant to complete our LA 101 guide, which makes the basics of local government and advocacy and civics accessible to a much wider audience. We had teach-ins, which reached thousands of people amid the pandemic. And when the pandemic itself hit, as Laura mentioned, we worked with longtime partners like ACT LA to launch the Healthy LA Coalition of 350 organizations, which won important protections for vulnerable tenants, homeowners, workers, and small businesses like street vendors. And as part of this, we got crucial philanthropic support from the National Media Network and locally from the Weingart Foundation, which really helped us grow tremendously. Third, we supported the effort to put Measure J, Reimagine LA, on the ballot. And then with funding from that official Measure J campaign, we ran phone banks of volunteers and paid staff, which called over 40,000 Angelenos, urging more investment in Black, brown, and working class communities rather than policing in jails. And that measure passed, and the fight, as I'm sure many folks like Brian can tell you, continues. So now in 2021, we're working on a whole bunch of things, including several civic education collaborations that I'm super pumped about. I'll tell you just about two of them very briefly. So the first is that we're helping our partners here in this cohort, Sypla, along with our partner, Los Angeles Walks, another cohort member, launch a new Walk La Via initiative. And you'll be hearing more on that soon. And then second, we're working on a new multimedia project with the folks from LA Podcast, Hayes Davenport, Scott Frazier, Alyssa Walker, that's going to be reporting on local policy at multiple levels, from how things actually happen at City Hall to how the policies actually play out, how they work on the ground, and frankly, how they don't work, with a particular focus on housing and homelessness. The second thing that I'm really excited about this year is that we're playing a key role in convening several different progressive groups for the first time ever to elect social justice focused candidates, neighborhood
David, I have to jump in, but I think we're having a bit of a issue.
Historic efforts that our partners are starting to undertake, that we are victories. This government conservative.
Okay, am I back on the spotlight? Am I talking right now? Okay. Hi, everyone. I think David's having some issues. I was worried that it was my computer and that I had dropped out.
Can you hear me?
Unfortunate, we were getting right into it. David, is that you?
Yeah, I'm back. I don't know what happened there.
Okay, good. Okay, we're having a bit of a sort of glitchy situation, and we're all wondering if it was us.
No, it was me.
So if you wouldn't mind rewinding back a little bit, we were just getting to the exciting bits and pieces, but then it froze.
Yeah. So what did you do last year?
Folks in the audience, you can help me out here. I last heard the collaboration with Scott Frazier, Hayes Davenport, Alyssa Walker.
Got it. Okay, cool. So the next thing, aside from kind of focusing on how policy is working at City Hall and working in the streets and not working, frankly, is that we're launching an effort, or have launched an effort around neighborhood councils. We've convened several progressive groups to make sure we're not running people against one another. And really, it's historic. There's never been an effort done to get people elected citywide before. And this is a place that's been a real bastion of conservatism and NIMBYism, and we're trying to change that. And then the last piece I'm excited about is a membership program we're launching. We want to be funded and governed by our members to build our people power. Currently, we have almost 100 monthly donors as members, giving whatever is significant for them, whether that's $300 a month or $3 a month. And we want to get to 1,000 members by the end of the year. Members are going to have a vote on endorsements, on our governance, and on our future. So what can you do? Well, LA Forward is designed to be a vehicle for solidarity. So we welcome you to get involved in many different ways. You can join us at one of a dozen upcoming events, neighborhood gatherings, issue team meetings, trainings, teach-ins, or our next monthly meeting on Sunday, April 11th. The easiest way to get involved is to go to our website, laforward.org, sign up for our newsletter. And if you're interested in our big plans for the local elections in 2022, feel free to come to our next virtual house party on April 18th. You can message me for details. And then last but not least, we would be really honored if you would become a sustaining dues-paying member of LA Forward. Really easy on our website, laforward.org, and looking forward to having you as part of our community.
Awesome. Thank you, David. And thank you for that smooth save after the very 2020, 2021 moment on Zoom. The LA Forward calendar is so incredible. Every time I go onto the website, I'm astounded by the amount of engagements that you have each week. So highly recommend that to everyone in the audience. Hop onto the LA Forward website and check out their calendar. There is literally something every week, as David mentioned. So thank you so much for being with us. And last but not least, I'm really excited to introduce Brian Canada, the Los Angeles coordinator for Californians United for a Responsible Budget. Welcome, Brian.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here. I was so inspired hearing about our incredible cohort's work today. And like Sharon said, I'm Brian Canada, the Deputy Director and LA Coordinator of Californians United for a Responsible Budget, or CURB. And as many of you know, CURB is a statewide coalition of more than 80 organizations working to reduce the number of people in prisons and jails, reduce the number of prisons and jails in the state, and shift wasteful spending away from incarceration and toward things that actually keep people safe, like housing, healthcare, jobs. We believe in care, not cages. The unprecedented events of 2020 have revealed to all Californians what marginalized communities have known for decades, that incarceration, family separation, and deportations are public health crises. And thanks to our incredible supporters, CURB is building our capacity to tackle these issues in 2021. Our staff has increased from 2 to 6. We're a Black-led organization and coalition with Black leadership occupying 4 out of 6 staff positions, including both directors. 2 staff members are formerly incarcerated leaders, and 2 are the children of formerly incarcerated parents, including myself, and I'll be meeting my dad for the first time in about 3 weeks. The work of CURB and our movement partners have made possible the fulfillment of our founder's mission this year. For the first time in history, California has pledged to close 2 state-owned prisons over the next 5 years. However, during the budget hearings on prison closure over the past several months, it has become painfully clear to both legislators and the community that CDCR has no real plan for prison closure. And that's why, after months of research, CURB will release the People's Plan for Prison Closure in April of 2021, which is a 40-page report calling for the release of at least 50,000 incarcerated people and providing detailed recommendations on which facilities to prioritize for closure and why. CURB is calling for 10 prisons to close in 5 years, not 2, and demanding a radical rethinking of our budgetary and ethical priorities as we envision a care first, incarceration last California. CURB has already held 5 budget advocacy workshops thus far in 2021, with more to come, educating and empowering our folks to demand that their representatives curb prison spending and expand the social safety net. We've also created the Budget to Save Lives campaign, which is a multi-year public education vision supported by more than 150 organizations dedicated to moving California toward a care-first future by investing in healing and rehabilitation, divesting from incarceration and policing, and ending the economic abandonment and austerity that endangers the lives of countless human beings. Last year, while navigating a complicated legislative environment during a global pandemic, as we all know, CURB passed the Racial Justice Act, a groundbreaking bill that will allow Black and brown folks who experienced racial bias while being charged with or convicted of a crime to legally challenge the racial bias in their case. It's a landmark piece of legislation. Alongside other incredible organizations across California, we also co-led the successful effort to defeat Proposition 20, which sought to turn back the progressive criminal legal reforms of the past decade that we've all been able to push forward. This year, CURB is really excited to co-sponsor 3 statewide 2021 bills that focus on racial justice and reducing the prison population. As many of us know, LA County is the epicenter for criminal legal reform, and I personally sit on the executive team of Justice LA and was also part of the steering committee for Measure J. In 2020, CURB designed and executed an independent public education campaign that challenged more than 2.1 million people to reimagine LA County and pass Measure J, which permanently changed the county charter to require a minimum of 10% of the county's revenue to go toward alternatives to incarceration and investments in Black and marginalized communities. This year, I'm on the coordinating committee of Reimagine LA Coalition, as well as leading the coalition's internal 2020-2021 health policy work group. I was elected this year to serve as community co-chair of LA County's Health, Mental Health, and Diversion Subcommittee. And during a really grueling 5-week process, our subcommittee passed monumentous proposals, including an approved recommendation to close Men's Central Jail, which is a horrible, terrible, disgusting place. And we allocated at least $200 million to go toward community-based care and treatment as part of that recommendation. All 5 of the subcommittees pushed through radical recommendations that demand deep investments in communities. And despite all of the obstacles the county created for community to move through this ridiculous process, there are significant obstacles that remain to Jay's implementation, especially the process's failure to focus on Black voices and Black lives, which is the center and purpose of Measure J. In March, early March this month, the LA County Chief Executive Officer released a memo to the county saying that Measure J would only have a $100 million set aside for this year's budget. And early estimates suggested that almost $1 billion should be allocated for Measure J funding phased in over the next several years. So they're trying to steal our money, y'all. And we know that the CEO's math does not add up. Working with the county has yielded hard lessons, and we know that implementation is as important as legislative success. So fully funding Measure J will be an uphill battle that will take the entirety of our community. That's every single person on this call. And it's something that's going to be central to mine and CURB's mission this year. SVP has been a lifeline of support to us. And if you're not dialed in to CURB, here's how you can get involved. I'm going to drop some links. Here is some links to folks. There's my little links. You can make a donation to CURB. We like money. And there is an address here, bit.ly/CURB donate. So that's bit.ly/CURB donate, all caps. You can sign on to our Vision for a Care First Future. As an individual, endorse a Budget to Save Lives campaign. You must sign up for updates from the Reimagine LA County Coalition so we can tell y'all how to mobilize to get our bag. We need our cash, y'all. Sign up at curbprisonspending.org to receive our semi-infrequent updates, because it's effing hard to keep up with that, real talk. So if somebody wants to be our web guru, please do that as well. However, We have a great social media coordinator. So we post a lot on social media. Follow @CurbPrisons and @Reimagine LA. And I'm just so thankful to be a part of this community. And please keep on keeping on. The struggle continues.
Thank you, Brian. And thank you for reminding us how important it is that we all show up. It is remarkable to reflect on Curb's growth from 2 team members to 6 during a pandemic, fighting such a difficult struggle, and you know, passing Measure J. So thank you for the reminder, and I'll re-emphasize that to everyone on this call. Show up, you know, follow these leaders, get involved in any ways that you can. Thank you so much for being here, for all the work that you're doing. So that, my friends, is our incredible group of Accelerator cohort leaders. And I think that they said it best. What is profound in this group, and I think this community, and in creating this vision of a more just and loving LA, is participating in this human network. Michael, I appreciate you for sharing that. And collaborating with values aligned groups, individuals, organizations when opportunities appear. So to close us out, sorry, just before we close out, I'd like to introduce our final guest speaker, the wonderful Helen Leung from LA Mass. LA Mass do collaboration with values aligned groups so well. Helen was on our second accelerator and is now a board member. As you can see, we're a growing, close family doing this work. So welcome, Helen.
Thank you so much, Sharon. I am just blown away with all the amazing victories and the work that's going to continue to happen. I want to reflect back on what we heard earlier, which is that we can't solve one problem in isolation, and Sahar's call that how do we resist together? So for me, as someone who was part of the Systems Change Accelerator, I just want to highlight how values-based alignment and collaboration could result in things beyond what each of our 8 accelerators have actually explicitly asked for. And I want to share a little bit about how my organization has worked with some of these amazing accelerators. I'm with LA Mass, and we're a community-based organization that collaborates with working class communities of color on issues of affordable housing and economic resilience in Northeast LA. And at the beginning of the pandemic, like many organizations, we partnered with our neighbors to create a community response. And although our response was unique to our community, we knew we were among dozens of other organizations doing something similar. And LA Forward, in their values of building skills and power and their endless teach-ins, created a space for my team to hold, to have a space and connect with other people doing this work, from best practices on mutual aid efforts to what does neighborhood organizing look like. And so, you know, I highlight LA Forward as an example of there are so many ways that you can, you know, for us, we benefited by contributing, by showing up, but it was really the space that LA Forward created for us. Another example is that last fall, as the pandemic continued, we learned about ongoing economic insecurity challenges by our community members. So we launched a food distribution program called the Northeast LA Mercadito. And this is still a weekly market style pickup that offers recovered produce to hundreds of families in the area. And to ensure that spoiled produce is not thrown away, we partnered with LA Compost to compost on site. And this, Michael's team teaches our volunteers how to compost and to build that composting ecosystem that he talked about, which really reflects our shared values of building capacity within our communities. And I think I want to highlight that because these are unexpected partnerships that emerged because it was clear what our values were, but our skills and our approach were different, and it was beautiful to be able to find a way to partner. And I want to, just talk also a little bit about what the Accelerator program meant for us as an organization. When we participated the second cohort, which is now 2 years ago, our focus at that time was about offering a model of affordable housing through accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, led by average homeowners. And for me, with the support of amazing coaches on this call, Ev and Ann, I learned how to tell my own story, and our team learned how to tell our own story in a way that also honored the lived experiences of people we're working with, and to really get get rid of all that wonky details that can be hangups for all of us. And in that process of being in the accelerator program, we also realized, which was very clearly articulated by all the accelerators today, which is like, we can't be the only players in the room, and that we have to expand our tent. And the success, at that time for us was not us building each of those affordable units of housing, but really to have a whole bunch of other organizations doing this work. So with that support of realizing that we are in a collective, we are in solidarity, we are in a community with all these other amazing organizations doing this work, the social justice lens that SVP has put forth in all of our trainings also inspired our organization. It laid the foundation for us to shift our mission to, rather than focus on our skill set, to really center the people, working class communities of color, in our work. And so now we're actually pursuing affordable housing work that centers the lives of renters within a community rather than that of homeowners across the city. And I want to end with saying that as we shift, and this is kind of the power of the SVP community, which is that the journey, the ongoing journey, because there's always going to have to be shifts in how you work, who you work with, how you get funded, that there's so much to learn from other organizations. And for us, as one of the 41 members of ACT LA, we learned so much because the focus of ACT LA, although it's on issues of housing, justice, and transportation, the focus is unapologetically about advocating for the working poor and communities of color. And so for us, we learn about what it means to be in coalition, to organize, and to add value. And I think that what has been so inspiring for me to hear today is that there are so many accelerators that are working in coalition. So I'll end by kind of putting out a call to action to each of you who are not yet involved with one of these organizations, to think about, who do you share values with and how could there be collaboration? And you heard so many ways from, supporting all the policy, attending events, like I think have direct meetings with the people who are here. Think about your professional skills that you have, that's always welcome. And think about how you share that social network that you have. And that's what the SVP family has done for me and for the LA Mass team. And so I'm so excited to be part of this board and look forward to having more of you be partners. And thank you for the opportunity, Sharon, for talking a little bit about what SVP has meant for me, but then also the amazing work of all the accelerators. And I was only able to highlight a few, but I could talk a lot about every one of them.
Well, thank you, Helen. And we learn so much from you, from LA Mass, from the way that you lead your work. So I just really appreciate that this partnership has evolved to one where we can sort of learn and build on each other's strengths. So with that, I am going to introduce SVPLA's Executive Director, Christine Margiotta, who will close us out.
Right. Thank you so much, Sharon. And what a just amazingly inspiring hour. So I'm reflecting as I'm listening today on this quote that so often grounds our work at SVPLA, and that is from Martin Luther King Jr., who says, "Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice." And as I think about our experience with this cohort and the cohorts that came before them, I think about all the ways that our accelerator leaders are using their power to create more justice in the world, from centering the leadership of people who are most impacted by injustice, to shifting the seats of power, shifting who is in those seats and how decisions are made, moving resources. And I'm really struck by the shifting of the how this work gets done. So I see in the chat, many of you highlighting the coalitions and partnerships that are happening within this cohort, also across the years of cohorts. The partnerships, and as Sharon mentioned at the beginning, this acknowledgement of the intersectionality of this social justice work, that we cannot succeed unless all of us succeed. And that's the beauty of this community. So I've just been so struck by the partnerships and the bridges that have been built across organizations. And I think about a conversation that we had with a cohort on the first day of this journey back in October 2019, before we had any idea what 2020 would bring, we said to the cohort, typically we have fast pitch in March. Typically that is a competitive event where a few of the organizations receive grants and accolades, so everyone is spotlighted. And we asked the cohort, would you like to continue in that way? Or would you like us to shift the format to become a collaboration and a spotlight and a celebration? And they, without missing a beat, said absolutely. Social justice is not the place for competition. So Fast Pitch has now become this collaborative celebration of the work of the incredible organizations in this community. And we have this cohort to thank for that shift and for their recognition that's the success of each of their efforts is the success of the whole. So now I want to invite all of you who are here today to think about the power that you have and the ways that you can support these organizations. Helen lifted up many of these. I heard financial resources are key, and particularly opportunities to be sustaining members, sustaining supporters of organizations. We all know the challenges of fundraising within nonprofits. So if you can support these organizations as sustaining members, I heard opportunities to sign on to their work, whether that's subscribing to a newsletter or signing on as a public endorser, and then amplifying that work, thinking about who you know in your world and how you can lift up the work of these incredible organizations. And finally, giving your time. So as Sharon mentioned, think about, where you can give your time and energy, what aligns with your gifts, and how you can support this interconnected work for justice. And as others have mentioned, we would love for you to join SVP if you're not a part of this community already. We are a big, vibrant community of people advancing racial and social justice, and we'd love for you to join us. So I want to appreciate our 8 accelerator leaders, our incredible alums, Sahar and Helen, for setting our context today, and Sharon, our program leader and MC today, as well as the whole SVP team, Janisha, who has been making this run so smoothly today, Yolanda, Kelly, and Ali, and of course to all of you for being here today to give your afternoon to this work of advancing justice in our communities. Thank you all for being here, and we hope to see you again really soon. All right, take care, everyone.